Some bright or sunny spells in between the showers. Despite the sunshine, though, sticking with that rather cool theme, temperatures reaching highs of around 8 or 9 Celsius in the north, 13, possibly 14 Celsius further south. Into the weekend, and there will be something a bit more unsettled still to come. Outbreaks of rain across central parts don't look particularly heavy on Saturday, and a few showers further north, but it's on Sunday when there's the chance that we could see something a bit heavier in terms of rainfall-wise, but we are likely to see our temperatures picking up a little bit as we go into the new week. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Long delays continue heading north up the M42 through Warwickshire this evening. The left lane of 2 is closed just after the Coles Hill exit. Junction 9 at the scene of an accident with queues all the way back to the M6 and on the opposite side of the carriageway passing the scene. Very slow heading north up the M1 through Derbyshire. That was after a car broke down just south of the Tibshelf services with queues back to the A38. Cambridgeshire west of Huntingdon, the A14 westbound closed from the A1 all the way to Frapston at the scene of an accident and spillage as you head into Northamptonshire. And the Surrey stretch of the M25, 2 lanes are coned off clockwise, 13 to 14, heading away from Staines where a lorry's broken down. Long queues out of Essex into Kent on the clockwise carriageway. At 1A at Dartford, a car and a lorry have collided, blocking off a lane. Queues back over the Q2 bridge. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
It's the final week to see how you could win our biggest prize yet. With thanks to Variety Cruises, a family company sailing since 1942, you have the chance to win a £10,000 7-night small boat cruise for 2. With flights, meals, excursions and drinks included, you'll be able to choose from any one of their 2025 Greek adventures. Plus, you'll also win £10,000 in tax-free cash to make your summer sizzle. And we'll pack you off with these luxury travel gifts. Hurry, as lines close on Friday. For another chance to win a prize worth over £20,000, text WIN to 63232. Text costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or post your name and number to GB04 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 PM on Friday. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall? Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
Our job is to do what's in the best interest of our country.
You made my argument for me.
My guests and I tackle the issues that really matter, with a sharp take on every story.
I'm hearing it up and down the country. That was a beginning, not an end.
Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 PM only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, it's 6 o'clock and I'm Michelle Dewberry. Coming up tonight, there is never a dull day in politics, and today Scotland's turn, because let me tell you, the Scottish Government has imploded. I'm asking a simple question: what should happen next? And the Labour Party have made an announcement about a new policy, this time about the trains. They want to bring the train companies essentially into public ownership. Are they on the right track with this or not? Do you see what I did there? And get this, everyone, the place where more people identify as English than anywhere else in the UK is actually in Wales. Yes, you heard that right. So let's explore national identity, shall we? What's yours? And if you are a benefit claimant, should the government be able to access your bank account to make sure that you are not pulling a fast one? Is that overreach or common sense? I've got all that to come and more, but before we get stuck in, let's cross live for tonight's latest news headlines.
Michelle, thank you. And as you've just been hearing, tensions are high in Edinburgh this evening, with the Scottish Greens planning to vote against First Minister Humza Yousaf in a vote of no confidence. It's after the SNP's power-sharing deal with the Greens collapsed this morning, leaving Mr Yousaf in charge of a minority government. Losing the vote wouldn't automatically spell the end for Mr Yousaf, but it would throw serious doubt over his ability to govern. The no-confidence motion was proposed by Scottish Conservative leader Douglas Ross, who branded the SNP leader weak and a failed First Minister. Moroccan asylum seeker Ahmed Alid has been convicted of murdering Terence Carney, who was 70 years old. Alid stabbed the pensioner 6 times in Hartlepool in what was intended as revenge for the Israel-Hamas conflict. GBNews reporter Anna Riley has more.
A jury at Teesside Crown Court has found that 45-year-old Moroccan asylum seeker Ahmed Alid is guilty of the murder of Terence Carney, a 70-year-old pensioner who was fatally stabbed in Hartlepool Centre on the 15th of October, 8 days on from when Hamas attacked Israel. The jury also found that Alid was guilty for the attempted murder of his housemate Javid Nouri, who he lived with in Home Office accommodation for asylum seekers in Hartlepool, and that this attack was motivated because his housemate had converted from Islam to Christianity. He will be sentenced here at Teesside Crown Court on the 17th of May.
A court in New York has overturned Harvey Weinstein's 2020 conviction for sex crimes. It's a stunning development for the former top Hollywood producer, whose crimes sparked what became known as the Me Too movement. Manhattan's district attorney will now decide whether to seek a retrial. There's little chance of him being released, though. He's also serving 16 years for the rape of a woman in a Beverly Hills hotel. Donald Trump says that US presidents must be immune from the threat of prosecution. It comes as his hush money case continues today. In a separate case, the US Supreme Court is hearing arguments for why he should be immune from charges related to efforts to overturn the 2020 election. Mr. Trump spoke outside court earlier this morning.
My constitutional rights have been taken away from me, but every single expert, every legal scholar, every respected scholar has said this is no case. There is no case here. The argument on immunity is very important. The president has to have immunity. This has nothing to do with me. This has to do with a president in the future, for 100 years from now. If you don't have immunity, you're not going to do anything. You're going to become a ceremonial president. You're just going to be doing nothing. You're not going to take any of the risks, both good and bad.
The government says more people should be using Britain's trains despite widespread dissatisfaction with services. Labour is promising to establish a publicly owned network led by rail industry experts, ensuring efficient and accountable services without burdening taxpayers. The government commissioned an independent review into railways in 2018, but little has changed since then. Transport Secretary Mark Harper says the network is still recovering from COVID lockdowns.
The big thing we're still having to deal with is the impact of the pandemic. The rail industry at the moment is financially not sustainable at the moment. The only route to solving that is to use the private sector innovation, the stuff they demonstrated they could deliver when we privatised them, when they doubled passenger numbers. We've got to get more people using railways. That's the only way they become financially sustainable. There's nothing in Labour's plans that's going to deliver that, quite the reverse.
The system of grading schools with one-word judgments should stay. That's according to the Department of Education. The government says grades such as outstanding or inadequate provide significant benefits and give parents a succinct summary of schools. The grading system came under scrutiny following the death of head teacher Ruth Perry, who took her own life after a report downgraded her school. Her sister, Julie Walters, says the government's response is woefully inadequate. And the famous red windmill on top of the Moulin Rouge in Paris plummeted to the ground overnight. Early visitors were stunned this morning to find the landmark broken into pieces on the street. The theatre is currently investigating the case, though it's not believed to be deliberate. Since opening in 1889, it's become one of the most popular destinations in Paris, inspiring the 2001 film and a stage musical currently playing in London. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen, or you can go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now it's back to Michelle.
Thanks for that, Tatiana. I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel, the director of the Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, and the director of the charity World Right, Kerry Dingle. Good evening to both of you. I was just about to say, we're all wearing our glasses with pride tonight. We've just taken yours off, Mark.
Yeah.
Ruined it for me.
I'm sorry about that.
We're about to be.
You want me to put them back on?
We're about to be the role models for those folk with bad eyesight, but you've ruined it. There you go. We've all been to Specsavers. Other glasses shops, of course, are available. What's on your mind tonight, everybody at home? Because it's not just about us three here. It is about you. There's lots going on, lots to discuss. You can get in touch with me all the usual ways. Of course, you can email me or tweet or X me, or you can go on the website and talk to me there, as some of you have already started doing so. You're a lovely bunch, aren't you? You can get in touch. As I said, your views are very, very welcome tonight. But of course, never a dull day when it comes to politics. And it's all going on over in Scotland. Long story short, the government there has pretty much imploded. Let's not waste any more time. Let's cross live to Scotland to talk to our Scottish reporter, Tony Maguire. Good evening. The sun looks very nice where you are. It's certainly not that sunny here, I can tell you. But anyway, for anyone that's not been following the twists and turns of today, can you bring us up to speed?
Sure thing, Michelle. I mean, how long do you have, really? That is the key question here. Everything really kicked off around 8:30 this morning when an emergency cabinet meeting led to the end of the Butte House Agreement. That has been in place since 2021, and it's essentially a coalition government between the Scottish Greens and the Scottish National Party. Well, that came to an end this morning, and what many people are saying has very much a kind of energy of, well, I'm going to dump you before you dump me, because certainly the Scottish Greens, well, they were already in talks as to whether this agreement would come to the end. But nevertheless, the SNP marched into this afternoon with a minority government. And then at FMQs, where the opposition parties get to pose their burning questions to the First Minister, of course, there was only one topic on the agenda today, and that essentially was headlined by Douglas Ross, the Scottish Conservative leader, calling a vote of no confidence in Humza Yousaf. Well, that seemed to come as a bit of a shock for the First Minister, and certainly with 31 MSPs, the Scottish Conservatives have the votes to make sure that that goes through as a vote in Parliament next week. Then over the course of this afternoon, we've seen the other parties come out. We've seen the Scottish Liberal Democrats say that they too have lost faith in Humza Yousaf, and of Scottish Labour, Anna Sarwar, making a video saying Scottish Labour will likely be voting with the Scottish Conservatives in this vote of no confidence. So who does that leave us with? Well, the Scottish Greens, who within the last hour held a press conference here at Holyrood to say that their former stablemates, well, they're going to be voting with the Conservatives because they have lost faith in Humza Yousaf. That leaves one MSP with the 64 MSPs voting with no confidence for the First Minister, and that one MSP is Ash Regan, former SNP Minister herself. She stepped down during the gender recognition reform debate, and now she was essentially going to be the kingmaker in this scenario. So a lot happening here, and hopefully it just came in under time.
You honestly couldn't make some of this stuff up, could you? But no, you're very good. Your timing was spot on. That's Tony Maguire. I'll leave you to go enjoy the last rays of the sunshine. I mean, I thought it was quite interesting there where he said Humza Yousaf was very surprised when he heard about this no confidence vote. I don't know who he talks to, but I talk to people on a daily basis, and I absolutely was not surprised when I heard that. I was actually quite surprised that it hadn't happened sooner. And that whole kind of dynamic about who actually wanted to break up with who. What do you think's been going on here?
Well, look, in my view, the Scottish National Party, in part, but only in part because they were with the Green Party, had a completely crazy environmental policy, which has now crashed against reality, and they have had to drop that policy wisely. They should never have embarked on that in the first place.
They wanted to cut the carbon emissions by 75% by 2030, in case you're not familiar. And they said that they're not going to meet... Last week they said that they're not going to meet that.
Can't possibly meet it. This has riled the Scottish Greens, who have therefore pulled out of the government. Fair enough. The Scottish Green Party is there to believe in these sort of fantasies. So they're out. Now it goes to the maths, which Tony Maguire explained pretty well. That if you were to add together the SNP and this one MP from the Alba Party, Alex Salmond's breakaway, it's 64-64. However, I wouldn't be surprised if some of the SNP MSPs themselves want to get rid of Yousaf as well. So I suspect, as a gambling man, he's out next week, one way or another. Now, that doesn't mean, like we have in the UK Parliament, it's not like a vote of confidence in the UK Parliament in Westminster. That does not trigger an election. Here in the Westminster Parliament, if you vote against the government and they lose your confidence, that's it. General election immediately happens. No. There'll be 28 days to try and form a new government, and only if that fails will there be new Holyrood elections. So I suspect... my guess would be Yousaf will probably go. The best he can hope for is a draw with the presiding officer then voting for him. More likely he goes, and then the SNP need to work out how on earth they can put together a governing coalition again.
Just quickly before I bring Kerry in, I mean, even if he loses this vote next week, it's not technically binding. So I guess, technically speaking, he could turn around and say, OK, you lot don't want me, but I believe in myself. And I'm going to persevere. Do you think there's a chance?
Is that right? Is it not? I don't know. Your constitutional knowledge is better than mine. I think if he loses a vote of confidence, he's got to go. I thought that was the rule.
Oh,
it would certainly be force majeure at this point.
I shall get someone to check that, but I didn't think he had to go.
What's mad here is the vote is about confidence in the First Minister. It should be about the Scottish Government as a whole. So you either take down that entire government. This would be crazy. It would be mad in Westminster to have a motion on Rishi Sunak as Prime Minister. You've either got to take down the government or support the government.
There's never a dull moment.
The rules written here, well, we're already confused about them, right, Michelle?
There is never a dull moment. And, yeah, confusion strikes. I shall get clarity, worry not. Kerry, your thoughts on it all?
Well, I'd just say good riddance to a coalition of cranks, really. I think they've behaved so autocratically, so... regardless of the interests of Scottish citizens.
Hang on, because I was going to say, people might be sitting at home going, what does that word mean? What do you mean?
An autocrat is someone who acts as a small concentration of power regardless of everyone else's interests. That's the sort of nub of autocracy. And I think that's what they've been like, as a sort of small group of technocratic politicians and civil servants supported by NGOs. And as Mark said, horrific on the Green politics, which it wasn't just the Greens, it was the SNP, and supported by Labour in terms of screwing up oil and gas in Scotland. We've had the Gender Recognition Act. Nobody voted in anybody to support that, and then a trans rapist in a women's prison. We've had the Scottish hate crime bill, criminalising people for what they might say over dinner when they've had a few. Shocking and so authoritarian. I just wish that this did trigger an election, and I'm not sure it will, but I think what the SNP have done in terms of dumping their Green association is desperately know and try and claw back a little bit of Scottish support, because I think they know people have had enough.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I talk to you guys every day, and I listen to what you have to say. And I won't repeat some of the criticisms that Humza comes into from some of you, but they're not very polite. So I'm on a mission today. I'm going to look right now as I'm speaking to you. Is anybody out there rooting for him? Because one of the things that he's actually arguing, the SNP are very fragmented at the moment, aren't they? And they're very kind of disjointed. He's saying, if you believe this anyway, that actually he made this decision about this coalition because he's putting his party's interests first. He thinks that this will be almost like a rallying cry to strengthen the SNP. Is there anyone out there watching in and around Scotland that agrees with that sentiment or not? Do you agree with that sentiment, that actually something that could come out of this is a much more united SNP?
No, because I think the problem was this, and I completely agree with what Kerry was just saying. Look, you've got to understand the SNP basically exists for one key purpose, which is to split Scotland from the United Kingdom. And they have failed in that endeavour. And therefore, they have gone down a million different bizarre rabbit holes, like the Gender Recognition Act, bizarre climate policy and the rest of it. The rough equivalent for us in England would be, I don't know, if the Brexit Party or UKIP had won an election outright, but couldn't get Britain out of the European Union, and then started to pursue other strange policies. And that's exactly what the SNP's done. So if the SNP can't trigger a second referendum or the departure of Scotland from the United Kingdom, what's it for? And what it's turned out to be for is a whole bizarre range of very woke policies and an underlying pretty poor performance. It's not like educational standards have enormously risen in Scotland compared to England. In fact, they've fallen behind. It's not like average wages have risen in Scotland more than England. In fact, they've fallen behind. So on all of the bread and butter barometers, the SNP government has performed badly. On all of this completely crazy stuff about reducing carbon emissions by that level by 2030 or putting men into women's prisons has become completely extraordinary as well. And they have failed in their principal objective of at least triggering a second referendum on the constitutional question. So pretty much fail, fail, fail.
I'm searching really high. I was listening to you, Mark, but I was also scouring the inbox. I was scouring the websites. I've not managed to find anyone yet that's backing him.
One quick thing, though, because I don't disagree with you, Mark. You know, it might be true that their founding principle or whatever is, you know, independence for Scotland. But I think if you look at their record and look at them historically, and remember these are arch Remainers as well, that they've always come from a political or philosophical outlook that supports behind closed doors politics, that is about, like the EU, keep the people away from the people because they think they know what's best for people. And you see that with these crazy acts, that it is that idea of we know what's best for people. So actually, and I've got no skin in the game in this, where if Brexit or UKIP or some other minority party, you know, against the EU had won an election in Britain, I don't think they would have had that crazy rabbit hole, cranky approach, because it wasn't a politics based on keep us away from the masses, we know better, which is what the SNP and Scottish Greens really believe in.
One of my viewers, Steve, says, I live in Scotland and it's about time both the SNP and the Greens got their just rewards. He says they've systematically destroyed Scotland between both of them. He says, however, equally, we should not trust Labour in Scotland either. So what does that mean then? Is it the Scottish Tories for you? Is that the answer? Get in touch and let me know. Gordon, you make an interesting point. You say after the destruction of pretty much every single service in Scotland and the billions wasted, plus the failures in Wales, is it time for the Blair lie that is devolution to be stopped and control returned to Westminster? Is it?
I don't think... I'm actually quite a fan of devolution, even though we've done it in an astonishing way. At least, you know, whether you like the Scottish government at the moment, and Michelle, you can't yet find a single viewer who does, but it's their decision and it's in their hands. And I don't really want to pronounce to the Scottish people from London. I like power being close to the people. I agree with Kerry, open to the people as well. But we in the United Kingdom are pretty much the most centralised bureaucracy and democracy in the Western world. Nearly 95% of all tax and spend decisions made by Westminster. So give people power. If they screw it up, change your government.
Well, there you go. I am on a one-woman mission. I am determined to find you. I'm sure there's one of you out there that is in Scotland that does support Humza Yousaf. Where are you? Get in touch with me, because so many people, I can tell you now, are getting in touch with me, and they absolutely do not back him. So I'm on a mission Tell me if you do, and also tell me why you do. After the break, I want to talk to the Labour Party. They've said essentially that they will, they're not using this word, but nationalise essentially the British train operators. What do you think to this? Is this a step in the right direction or not? See you in 2.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
But first, to a story that makes me very, very proud. The largest cross of St George in the entire country has been unfurled in my home city of Nottingham. Look at it. Now, we all know how so many people have tried to cancel England's national flag, so this is a great thing to see. 6 days before St George's Day, well, we've been out and about in Nottingham to get the views of the locals.
I think it's really good to see it up there. It's good to see a celebration of England, the country. I think there's a lot of times now we don't celebrate, and it's good to see.
I think it's pretty good, actually. It looks pretty good. Yeah. Nice to support the local saint, so to speak.
I think it's amazing. I do. I think it's absolutely amazing, and it's proud for something in our country. Oh, yeah, proud to be English, of course.
Absolutely brilliant, yeah.
Does it make you feel proud to be English?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Get in. Well, let's cross live now to Old Market Square and speak to Natalie Fay, who's the editor of Nottingham Live. Natalie, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure to have you on. I know the Old Market Square, my old stomping ground, that council house. Brian Clough lived the 2 European Cups on that balcony behind us there. That council house, Natalie, normally has flags for pride, for trans awareness, for inclusivity, for Black History Month, for disability. But this, when this flag came out today, the first reaction I had, Natalie, was, is it real? It's behind you. Is it real?
It's 60 foot by 26 foot, which is absolutely huge. This goes up every single year without fail. In fact, this year, it's going up for an even longer period than it was last year. I think it's just great the Nottingham City Council is celebrating everything, because we should celebrate everything. We've got a great diverse city, pride, forests, panthers, whatever it is. And the council house is a great place to display all those things. Everyone sees it, it's iconic.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. I'm still searching, everyone. Are you in Scotland and you are massively rooting for Humza Yousaf? If you are, please get in touch with me. I'm desperate to find you. I'm on a mission till 7, alongside with the director of the Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, and the director of the charity World Right, Kerry Dingle. I do like the name of your charity. I think it sounds very assertive.
Well, it's actually right as in write a letter, so it's not that assertive. Maybe it sounds it.
I like it, I like it. We were just talking about the ridiculous goings-on in Scotland. I can tell you, Humza Yousaf doesn't have much support among you lot at home. I hate to break it to you as well, I was actually right. So if he loses his vote, he's not forced to resign, so he could decide to ignore it. I don't think
how can you ever remove him?
Well, because you can't, who's going to govern if they know that people haven't got confidence in them? It's not a good look, is it?
Well, if he ignores the vote, I would think he would be of exactly the personality type to continue regardless.
Well, we shall see what will happen. Derek said, Michelle, what has it got to do with you lot, what goes on in Scotland? We are a devolved country. We've got our own parliament. Keep your beb out. My beb? My beb?
I don't know what that means.
I don't know.
Translate that into English.
I hope that's not a rude thing that I need to keep out of the business. Derek, my friend, the clue is in the title, GBNews, you know, very much interested, not just in Scotland, of course. We're interested in Wales, Northern Ireland and England. We're all one happy family, aren't we? You tell me. Look, I want to talk to you about the Labour Party because they've unleashed a policy. So many people say, well, what do the Labour Party stand for? What are their policies? Well, today you found out about at least one of them because essentially they don't use the word nationalise, I've got to say, but what they're going to do is take the train operators and they are going to bring them under public ownership within like a new body that's going to be set up within the first parliamentary term. Let's just have a little listen.
Huge sums continue to be wasted on management fees and shareholder dividends, and despite 30 years of privatisation, shockingly, it is the taxpayer who still props up our failing railways to the tune of billions of pounds every year. That is why today I am setting out Labour's plan to fix Britain's railways.
There you go. Apparently this is the biggest reform of our railways for a generation. Do you back it?
No, although I'm delighted, and I expect to have quoted back at her what we just heard there about the taxpayer props up the railway system. Was ever thus? If Labour's policy was to end subsidies for railways, I would probably be in favour. The truth of the matter is, Michelle, I was trying to look up the exact numbers before coming on air. I can't find them. But basically, high earners use railways. Railways are the most subsidised part of our transport network, even when the railways are run by private hands. So if the Labour Party is saying no more taxpayer subsidies, great, sign me up. But that's not what they're saying. They actually think the state, politicians and bureaucrats will be able to run this better than companies. I readily accept a good number of these companies have not run it well. But don't assume from that that politicians and bureaucrats can run it better. I'm old enough, sad to admit, I remember the sad old days of British Rail, where they sold coffee by the slice. And we will be going back to that. Timetables will be worse, strikes will be worse. But if the taxpayer's no longer propping it up, which is what I think I've just heard from the Labour Party, 3 cheers for that.
Do you share those cheers, Kerry?
Well, the figures are last year, the state subsidy to the 14 rail companies was 12 billion. That's just 22 to 23. 12 billion in taxpayers' money. That's over £420 per household, including those of us who never get a train north because rather go in a car. I mean, it's just completely insane. So I can't see how this is going. I share Mark's view that it's not necessarily going to be run any better. Why would it be? And I, being old, also remember the days of dog-eared cardboard sandwiches and slop supposedly being coffee or tea, and it being absolutely the dirty, smelly trains that you didn't want to be on. I can't see why there is suddenly going to be an improvement because it's state-run. I'm not against state-run industries where they make sense. But I don't see how this... why should this be some great vote winner? I don't know who is going to get excited by it.
Well, there's a lot of people that don't like well, not people, but organisations and the people that run them and the investors that have the shares in them. A lot of people don't like people making money off essential services, if you like, utilities. Like, loads of people are getting in touch and saying to me now about water. Charlotte says, I do agree with nationalising railways, but I think it's more important to nationalise water. So I think there's this whole sense of why are organisations, especially ones in different countries as well, making money off our train network. But actually, when you look at things, one of the most profitable aspects of the railways are the leasing companies, like the rolling stock companies. And the Labour plan, it is still actually to lease those carriages from those organisations. Now, I don't imagine that those organisations are suddenly going to take a massive hit to their profits. So surely these profits are still going to be going out to these organisations in part?
Well, as we've just heard, it's nearly impossible to make a profit running railways. I mean, if you end the state subsidies, the railway lines in Britain will close, almost all of them. There's virtually no piece of track that is profitable. There'll be some, but very, very, very little. In today's modern world, moving people from A to B across a train track on rolling stock is just a hyper inefficient way to move people around. It's basically rich middle class people like me, I don't own a car, who are subsidised by the state to take it.
Sorry, just rewind. You don't own a car?
I don't own a car, no.
Why?
Why would I need to own a car? I live right next to Clapham Junction railway station. I travel within London. When I don't travel within London, I'm usually going to an airport to fly to another city. Why would I need a car? So thank you very much to the great British public and all of your viewers for subsidising my transport choice, but I don't think they should have to.
I assume everyone's like me, that absolutely needs a car, because the amount of junk, I'm like a travelling circus with my kid, the amount of junk that I transport along with me, there's no way I could do without my car. But a lot of you guys at home, perhaps you'll have your rail cards, you're saying. A lot of people use the networks and essentially the higher earners, but you get the seniors among you will get a nice discount with a rail card. Anyway, one of the other things that the Labour Party said, Kerry, is that they are not going to close down ticket offices, and this was a big debate that was raging on quite recently, actually, about whether or not we do need all of these ticket offices. Do you think we do?
Yeah, I do think we do need the ticket offices for sure, and I think that's a tragedy, and that's, for me, just a symptom of planned underinvestment yet again. So I can't see that we're having improvement. I know the trade unions are very much for the renationalisation of rail, but your viewer's probably quite right. Water is more important, which is just such a disaster area. Thames Water in particular, with all its sewage outpouring. But I think that old left-right divide doesn't really exist in the same old way. And what we all want is a decent service. And you're probably right, Michelle. People hate to find out that people are skimming and scamming off us because, you know, state subsidies are lining shareholders' pockets. But I'm not even sure that really happened. And Labour isn't touching that because, as you say, they're not privatising the only profitable bits.
Well, Baroness Jacqueline Foster, regular viewers will know she is often a panellist on this programme. She just sent me a message on Twitter saying if we were still in the EU, none of this would be permitted because railways across the EU have had to comply with the rail liberalisation regulations, in brackets, the railway packages, and can no longer be fully nationalised. So is this essentially a Brexit benefit?
Well, it might be a Brexit disbenefit. Yeah, well, I don't ever have breakfast on a train. It's disgusting. It may be a disbenefit, but I don't see why Europe should set how we in Britain run our railways. We might screw it up ourselves or make them brilliant ourselves. But there shouldn't be any EU railways legislation. It should be up to each country to work out how to run their railways. And look, the age-old problem here, Michelle, sorry to be an economics nerd, but that's what I am. In all of these areas, the question is, can you bring in competition? Because if you can, then markets work. We used to have a single nationalised airline, British Airways. Now we've got a whole multitude of them. You might like some and you might not like others, but they compete. Same with supermarkets, they compete. Bit harder to get competition into the rail sector because usually people are only using one line. You know, I want to get from Clapham Junction to Victoria every day. There's not a whole plethora of different services. Much harder with water. You don't tend to switch off your water supply and get it from somewhere else. But the aim here is to get proper competition into these things that look like natural monopolies in order to get all of the benefits of the market and to get away from politicians running things. There's no example, in my view, of politicians running a major industry successfully, and my first piece of evidence is the National Health Service.
Do you agree with that? Also, as well, the Labour was saying that they're going to have a best price guarantee, essentially, so you can always get your tickets for the cheapest price. But I'm really tight, so I buy split ticketing now. So instead of buying from A to B, I will buy, from A to D, I will buy A to B, B to C, C to D, whatever. So I'm interested to see whether or not this best price guarantee will actually match those split ticket prices or not. Lots of people are getting in touch, actually, and saying that... I mean, I would say, actually, you're pretty split. Richard does say, though, that this is the only Labour Party policy that I agree with. He says that Rishi Sunak should pinch it and it may save his bacon. Well, actually, there was a report done a few years ago now, actually, and even down to the title, that Great British Railway. That was some of the recommendations in this report, but the Tories never actually followed up with it. And some people say, Kerry, that's because Rishi Sunak is just not really that interested in the train because he don't really use them.
Well, may or may not be, but I don't think we've seen a huge amount of evidence of Rishi Sunak or the Conservatives solving a lot of our infrastructure problems. I mean, look at the mismanagement around the whole HS2 thing. Talk about wasting billions in failed rail. You know, I haven't got much faith whether he uses a train or not. And I'm not sure that Keir Starmer spends his time on a lot of trains. I've no idea. But I think this is an attempt by Labour to, win more support in the absence of any other policies, to be honest.
Very fair.
Brian says get rid of the unions and the privates. Get rid of the unions and then the private sector could make it work, he says. Otherwise, if we go backwards under Labour, we will be back to chaos. Do you agree with that or not? After the break, I want to talk to you. Where do you identify? Do you identify, for example, as being English? Let me tell you now, in the UK, the place where the highest percentage of people do identify as English is not even in England. See you in 2.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. It's going to be another rather chilly night for many of us, and there will be some showers around and more showers to come as we go through tomorrow due to an area of low pressure just out in the North Sea, bringing a showery theme to many places. Some further showery rain through this evening and overnight across southern parts, and here it is going to stay pretty cloudy, keeping temperatures up. Elsewhere, there'll be some clearer skies further north, albeit with a few showers around across some northern and eastern coastal parts, perhaps the odd wintry one over the higher ground of Scotland. Where we see the skies clear, we are going to see temperatures dropping, so they will fall a few degrees below freezing in some rural spots, a touch of frost for some of us first thing tomorrow morning. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, staying pretty cloudy across some far southern areas, and watch out for some heavy, perhaps even torrential downpours across parts of the southwest into the afternoon. Elsewhere, the showers across the far north and east will become more widespread, feeding inland, so a greater chance that many of us will catch one into the afternoon. Temperatures staying a little bit on the low side, not feeling too bad in the sunshine, otherwise a bit cool for the time of year. Into Saturday, and there will be some showery rain feeding its way northwards across parts of England and Wales. Could be a little bit heavy at times. Also a scattering of showers for northern and western parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but in between these two areas, staying largely dry. There may even be some sunshine at times. Sunday brings some heavy persistent rain to some eastern southeastern parts, but temperatures are gradually climbing. Bye-bye.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Long delays down the M42 through the West Midlands tonight. The left lane is closed. Junction 5 to 4, putting Solihull and Shirley at the scene of a breakdown. And queuing heading north up the M5, not far from there, from Junction 3 to 2 near Birmingham, where one lane's closed at the scene of a breakdown. Cambridgeshire, west of Huntingdon, the westbound carriageway of the A14 shut from the A1 all the way along to Frapston into Northamptonshire, following a collision and spillage. Several problems on the M25 on the Surrey stretch, 2 lanes shut clockwise past the scene of a breakdown just after Staines, and then anti-clockwise a lorry's broken down just north of the M3, blocking off the 2 outside lanes. Out of Essex into Kent, long clockwise queues at 1A at Dartford, a lane shut where a car and a lorry have collided. Queues back over the QE2 bridge, back towards the Lakeside exit, and that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
We're GB News, and we come from a proud tradition of British journalism.
That's why I'm so excited to be here. It's something so new.
The first news channel to be launched in Britain in over 30 years.
Launched to represent the views of the British people.
To go where other broadcasters refuse to go.
How did you find out about the story in the first place?
Launched with one aim.
To be the fearless champion of Britain.
It's an absolutely fantastic atmosphere here.
This is GB News. The People's
Channel. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you, excuse me, I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, I've got my panel, the director of the Popular Conservatives, Mark Littlewood, and the director of the charity Wild Right, Kerry Dingle. Still on my mission to find Hamza Yousaf supporter. Margaret's been in touch and said, I've found the supporter, but it's his mummy. She says, it's not quite what I'm seeking, Margaret, I've got to say. Who's this as well? Mary says, your female guest talked about dirty, smelly train. She said, I don't remember ever travelling on a dirty, smelly train. She says, my husband worked for 50 years on the railway, though, and the moment it was all privatised, the whole network changed. And she says, by the way, there is no railway in the world that can successfully exist without subsidies. Is that fair? Get in touch and tell me your thoughts. But get this right, the area in the UK with the highest percentage of people who identify solely as being English, do you know where it is? Did you guess during the break? It's actually in Wales. I find this quite interesting, actually. Mark, 14% of people living in England apparently identify as English only. What do you think to these stats? I mean, the place in Wales...
About nearly 40%,
Broughton,
isn't it?
Yeah, Broughton and Saltney, 38.9% of residents do identify as English only there. That was the highest place. Your thoughts on this?
Yeah, but I actually sometimes wonder whether it's not that surprising. It's because I'm presuming I've never been to Broughton and Saltney. I'm sure the folk there are wonderful. But I sometimes wonder if you're not in the heart of England, you actually feel more English. Certainly, I feel more English when I'm abroad, actually.
Do you?
Yeah, and, you know, I go on holiday to Europe quite a lot, and certainly if you meet another English person, you build up an immediate rapport quite quickly, more so than I do at Paddington Station round the corner, full of English people. So you recognise and notice your English more when there are fewer of you. I must admit, I don't quite get the English-only thing. I would describe myself as English and British, but I also identify quite strongly with a region of the United Kingdom. And I think you can have multi-layered identities. I'm not quite sure what English-only means.
Yeah,
really.
I would identify primarily as Yorkshire. Like, I'm a Yorkshire girl. Yeah. That for me, and I feel quite passionately connected to that identity. What about you, Kerry?
Well, I don't. It's really weird. I don't know if it's just being involved in a sort of more internationalist politics for so many years.
You don't what?
I don't identify with a region and I don't identify as English. I do refer to myself as British. I refer to myself as British and I wonder if that's because of a political thing too, because I want to support the union with Scotland. So that's how I think. But I am proud to be British in that I'm proud of the British people. I'm not a king and country person. Well, I loathe the miserablest green king anyway, but I'm very proud of the British people for...
Oh, I can hear people shouting at you already.
Yes, they will be.
How can you loathe the king?
For supporting Ukraine, I'm very proud that there's plenty of people in Britain who take the side of Israel against Hamas. And that's my internationalism, and that's what I'm proud of British people for reflecting in what they do.
How can you loathe the king?
I wish him well with his cancer. I've always loathed Charles. He exemplifies a miserablest green politics, is part of an anti-democratic institution. What's to love?
Well, did you love the Queen?
I had a lot of time for the Queen in terms of her belief in service, and so I would absolutely side with the Queen in relation to that. But I'm not a monarchist.
Are you, Mark?
I flip and chop and change about this. I actually don't think it's particularly important one way or the other. I think actually one thing I like about the monarchy is it stops politicians having the power of being the head of state, which would be absolutely appalling. But on the identity thing, again, like, so you've just said, Michelle, what's more important to you, Yorkshire or England?
Well, Yorkshire.
Yeah, so I would say I'm a southerner first. English second, British third.
And this is a real, because to me, I am very, very, very proud northerner.
Yeah.
And
so you go Yorkshire, northerner, England, Britain, European, human race, that kind of order. 6 layers of identity.
Yeah.
I go Southampton, southerner, England, Britain, Europe and the Western world.
Well, what's your order again, Kerry?
Probably internationalist, British, West Country, support farmers.
So you're like...
English is like number 9 or something. Right.
England is nowhere.
You're like completely tipped the opposite direction then.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, it's a product of your upbringing, your politics, your belief. Mine's in humanism and universal values. I don't think you're that removed. But what you identify with, and I'm married to a northerner who's very northern and from Leeds.
Oh, I like you again now.
And I have to take the mickey a lot of the time.
Well, I identify as being someone who's been told about 5 times she's got to go to the break, and I was ignoring it because I was enjoying that conversation. But I'll identify now as someone that listens. So I'll see you in 2, and when I come back, I want to talk to you about whether or not you think the government should have access to your bank account if you claim benefits. See you in 2.
I'm Gloria Di Piero. This is GB News, Britain's election channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you that there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Prince Harry, remember him? He appears to have fully turned his back on the UK as he listed his primary residence as the United States for the very first time in papers published yesterday. So interestingly, Harry listed the date on the formal US residency forms as the 29th of June 2023, last year. So that was the very same day he was kicked out of Frogmore Cottage in Great Windsor Park by his dad, the King. Charlotte, thank you for joining me. Okay. Are we just putting 2 and 2 together here with the significance of this date? Because there were stories during the rounds today that Harry chose that date specifically because he was so hurt about being booted out of Frogmore by his dad.
Yeah, I mean, to me it feels like he's trolling his dad a bit, because he could have said that he's been a US resident since 2020 when he quit the UK and moved to the States, but instead he chose the exact day that his dad kicked him out of Frogmore. But the reason his dad kicked him out of Frogmore was because he'd slagged off Camilla in Spare. And, you know, and his dad, apparently it was a really difficult decision for Charles, because, of course, no dad wants to kick their son out of their home. But he went beyond the pale. So Charles took the difficult decision to say, look, Frogmore's been empty for years anyway. We've spent £2.4 million doing it up for you. And now you've, you know, insulted our family in your book, Spare. Why is he so hung up on Frogmore? Because this is the country he was desperate to get away from. This is a house he didn't particularly want to live in and, in fact, didn't live in.
Well, he was forced, by the way, to pay £2.5 million to fund the renovations after it all kicked off. I mean, would that have anything to do with...
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that sort of galvanised his anger towards the whole situation. He thought he was getting a fantastic freebie. And there was, you know, there were a few reports at the time that Meghan actually thought she was moving into Frogmore House, which is a much grander property. And she sort of felt a bit sort of tricked or confused and hadn't quite realised it was actually a cottage, which is only a mere, I think it was only a mere 8 bedrooms.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
I'm Stephen Dixon, and thanks for joining us on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, Michelle Dewberry with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Mark Littlewood and Kerry Dingle remain. I'm just still trying to work out the telling off that I got at the start of the programme from Derek, the one that was saying, what's it got to do with you, what goes on in Scotland, telling me to keep my beb out. I still haven't quite managed to work out what I'm keeping out. What's my beb? Is it one suggestion was your nose, the other one was your mouth. Never even heard of it. Tell me what I've got to keep out, please, because I'm absolutely intrigued now. Anyway, we had a really interesting conversation in the break about our identity. Please do tell me how you identify and why, because I found that bit a really interesting one as well. But look, the Data Protection and Digital Information Bill could compel banks and building societies to give the Department for Works and Pensions data when it comes to your bank account. This is all in the pursuit of trying to identify fraud and error in the benefits system. Concerns have been raised about this, Mark. Where are you on it?
This is absolutely horrific, Michelle. Well done for pronunciating the Data Protection Act and Digital Information Bill. Sounds dull as dishwater, doesn't it? And most of it is, except they have slotted in this clause in order to basically get the banks to do the state's job of looking for welfare fraud without any evidence against you. So we're not talking about someone where we've identified, you think I've been wrongly claiming child benefit because I've just admitted on GB News I have no children, and then you start investigating me because you've got a case. This is a fishing expedition against people who retain, who get welfare benefits. And I really hope, I'm delighted to see that a couple of Conservative MPs have already spoken up against it, Marcus Fish and Charles Walker. I'm trying to get more to speak up against it, and I hope the Labour Party will oppose it. The Conservatives will think anything that clamps down on welfare fraud sounds like a good thing for me. No, 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 no. If this goes through, the banks will be looking into your tax affairs next, and your private relationship with your bank will be handed over to the government even if there is not a scintilla of evidence that you have done anything wrong. That's unconscionable.
Are you concerned about this at home? Tell me, Kerry, are you?
I find it terrifying. I think, you know, we already saw what happened with Nigel Farage and Coots. We saw what happened to the Canadian truckers with GoFundMe and later PayPal. You know, it's already the case, there is no need for extra law, that if the police want, and the DWP go to the police with suspicious activity, the banks are obliged to enforce what's called an SAR, Suspicious Activity Report, and they can freeze and hold your money. There's no need for new law. It's already draconian, just on the basis of suspicion. A friend of mine running a charity was getting a big donation from America that caused a red flag. It was upheld, their bank account was frozen under a SAR, and you don't even have the right to know why it's happening. That's how draconian and scary this stuff is.
But, Kerry, this is even worse, right?
Yeah,
At least there was a suspicion. This is without suspicion.
Yeah, not only does this, and this isn't just... so it's got nothing to do with cracking down on benefit fraud, because they can already do that and sequester your account and your all your details. They don't have a problem with doing that. This is a Snoop's Charter, and it means that politics gets into banking and banking gets into more ability to say what they want to do according to what we think.
Well, I can tell you now, some of my viewers disagree with you. Bruce says, yes, the government absolutely should have access to benefit claimants' bank accounts. There is a lot of people out there working and not paying their taxes. That is very easy to spot, he says, with internet banking payments hidden in their accounts. Cliff says, if there's anyone legitimately claiming benefits, they should be more than happy to have their bank account looked at. As ever, it is the criminals that will protest. What do you think to that?
No, I hate all of this. You've got nothing to fear, nothing to fear, nothing to hide, nothing to fear sort of argument. I mean, on this basis, why not just look into everybody's bank account? Let's just put it all in the public domain and get the banks to pay for it, and let's see if the police think any of us have done anything wrong. Privacy is an important feature of society, and handing over all this data to government on a fishing expedition without any suspicion that this person next door has broken the benefit rules or is dodging tax, without suspicion. And here's a number to conjure with, Michelle, that your viewers might be interested in. We spend £17 billion a year on policing in this country from the taxpayer. How much money do you think is now forcibly paid by banks on money laundering protection?
Don't know, but tell me
34
quick.
billion, twice the amount, and
There
this
you
is another
go.
part of that.
Riveting stuff. Ron says tonight's been the best show for ages. He says he's enjoyed the panelists and the presenter. Thank you for watching, Ron. And I've got to the bottom of the Beb. When the viewer told me to keep my Beb out, turns out it was a typo. That's why we couldn't figure it out. Apparently, the fella meant neb. He's confirmed to me it's Scottish slang for nose, but then he does clarify. He says, nothing personal, Michelle. I think your nose is quite cute. Thank you very much, and I'm glad that we cleared that up, or else I'd be thinking about it all night long. But for now, thank you very much for your company, and thank you at home for yours too. Do not go anywhere, though, because Nigel Farage is up next. Night.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your latest GB News weather forecast brought to you by the Met Office. It's going to be another rather chilly night for many of us, and there will be some showers around and more showers to come as we go through tomorrow due to an area of low pressure just out in the North Sea, bringing a showery theme to many places. Some further showery rain through this evening and overnight across southern parts, and here it is going to stay pretty cloudy, keeping temperatures up. Elsewhere, there'll be some clearer skies further north, albeit with a few showers around across some northern and eastern coastal parts, perhaps the odd wintry one over the higher ground of Scotland. Where we see the skies clear, we are going to see temperatures dropping, so they will fall a few degrees below freezing in some rural spots, a touch of frost for some of us first thing tomorrow morning. Otherwise, as we go through tomorrow, staying pretty cloudy across some far southern areas, and watch out for some heavy, perhaps even torrential downpours across parts of the southwest into the afternoon. Elsewhere, the showers across the far north and east will become more widespread, feeding inland, so a greater chance that many of us will catch one into the afternoon. Temperatures staying a little bit on the low side, not feeling too bad in the sunshine, otherwise a bit cool for the time of year. Into Saturday, and there will be some showery rain feeding its way northwards across parts of England and Wales. Could be a little bit heavy at times. Also a scattering of showers for northern and western parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland, but in between these two areas, staying largely dry. There may even be some sunshine at times. Sunday brings some heavy persistent rain